We now continue with more of the Mark Milton Show with The Smash.
I want to tell you a little bit more about Miller Furniture. Since 1927, they've been, providing families with furniture in the St. Louis area. They just wrapped up a half-price sale, but they still have a lot of good deals going on in their Belleville and Lake St. Louis stores. Just to tell you a little bit about them, Miller Furniture has more solid wood, American-made furniture options than any store in the St. Louis area. If you need furniture for your living room, for your bedroom, for your dining room, I cannot recommend them highly enough. We've been buying furniture from them really my entire life. My family has, and even now today, me and my wife purchased most of our furniture from Miller Furniture. They've got these great Amish-made wooden options. We just ordered a dining room set, and
that's sturdy furniture there, buddy.
Yeah, it's for a lifetime, right?
Yeah,
It's furniture that they really are lifetime pieces. So I can't encourage you enough to go out and see Miller Furniture either at their Belleville store or in Lake St. Louis. You can visit them at Miller, Mueller, furniture.com. This has sort of been a sports-themed show today.
Let's go.
Kind of interesting. And I want one fun fact about Miller Furniture. So Mark Miller, who's around my age, he's currently running the operations there. But like I said, they've been around since 1927, founded by Mark's great-grandpa.
Yeah.
His grandfather pitched for the Detroit Tigers. He was a Major League Baseball pitcher and pitched in the World Series. And he holds the record in Major League Baseball that will never be broken. He pitched 19 and two-thirds innings in a game as a starting pitcher.
Wow.
19 and two-thirds innings. That is a record. When you talk about records.
Did he have an arm at the end of that,
I don't know. But, that's truly a record that will never be broken. So we appreciate Miller Furniture being our studio sponsor here. So we've talked a lot about sports today, and with that theme, I thought we'd talk a little bit about athletes, professional athletes, and tax problems because it happens quite a bit. And as the STLTaxLawyer, I pick up on stories about athletes. I've represented some athletes who have had tax issues, and just this week I saw Barstool sort of tweeted or posted on Instagram. It was a story about John Daly. It's really an old story, but about how he had, estimated that he had lost $55 to $60 million gambling during his lifetime.
Yeah.
And what was funny is one of the ways he calculated that was he went back and looked at his tax returns to see what he had reported as far as gambling income and gambling losses. Because as you know, you can offset gambling winnings with gambling losses when you go to file your tax return.
I did not know.
So it's kind of an interesting issue. But what's also interesting about John Daly is he also has had a lot of IRS issues. So, back in the day, I think he had $1 million federal tax lien against him. And I think one of the things that athletes struggle with is, you're at, a lot of, especially golfers. The income you're making is self-employment income. And so it's your responsibility when you're earning money as you win tournaments or as you place in the top 10 to make sure that you're paying taxes as you go. We have a pay-as-you-go system. Most people who are employees, who get W-2s, they have money withheld every paycheck. So they're paying as they go. Whereas when you're self-employed, you don't have that same, I don't like to call it a luxury, but you don't have that same thing happening where money's being withheld and paid over to the government on a regular basis. And so it does tend to sneak up on some athletes who, maybe they're riding high for a long period of time and they always catch up, but then something happens. Maybe they get injured or they, lose a contract or maybe like in the case of a professional golfer like John Daly, he was at the pinnacle, right? Early 90s, he'd won a couple majors, was earning substantial amounts of money, and then he had some issues, with addiction and mental health and sort of just, fell apart professionally.
Maybe that addiction was why he was wearing those wacky pants. Remember, he used to have wacky pants.
Well, that's his new thing. Yeah, the loudmouth apparel is. I don't know if he owns it or he's got an ownership stake. But yeah, he actually when he was here for the PGA,
I didn't know.
Yeah, when he was here for the PGA in 2018, he wore some St. Louis Cardinal loudmouth pants during one of the rounds. So. And there's been other athletes too over the years that have been. Pete Rose was another one that owed $500,000 to the IRS at one point.
Remember that.
And again, it's not so much the money they make on the field that gets them into trouble because as employees of their ball clubs, they are actually W-2 employees.
Right.
So they have their federal, or at least they should have their federal income tax and state income tax withheld.
Yeah.
State taxes are also a major issue for professional athletes because when you're a professional athlete and you're, traveling the country playing road games, if you're in the case of a baseball player, you actually have to pay income tax to the states where you're earning that income. So theoretically, a California franchise tax board can assess taxes against a player who may be traveling to L.A. or Anaheim or San Francisco to play road games there. So it's
from Florida, let's say.
Correct. So even though Florida is a no income tax state, no state income tax, athletes who maybe their home team is the Florida Marlins, they still have to pay state income tax to a state
if they're going
where they
to
play
California or Nevada or any of.
And I wrote a blog article. You can find it at STLTaxLawyer.com. Back when Bryce Harper and Manny Machado were free agents, I guess this would have been maybe 2 years ago before the MLB season. They were both free agents looking at different options, and I said, if you wanted to minimize your tax burden, here are the different places where you could go. Because, for example, if you play, let's say you play in the AL West, you might think, oh, well, the West, you got California, could actually, impose a pretty significant tax burden. But let's say you play for the Texas Rangers, the state of Texas, no income tax state. Interestingly enough, Seattle, Washington, the state of Washington has no income tax. You'd think, being the liberal bastion that it is, the state of Washington would have an income tax, but they actually do not have a personal income tax. So if you chose to play, let's say, for the Texas Rangers, the Seattle Mariners, you'd only be paying state income tax when you go on the road, and so, albeit you would have to pay it when you go to play in Oakland or Anaheim for those AL West games. So there would be tax there. But I talked about how probably the worst place you could play would be the NL West, which is where Manny Machado chose to go. He's with the San Diego Padres. Yeah. Because you have San Diego, which is in California. You have the LA Dodgers, which are in California. And you also have San Francisco Giants, which are in California. So those are all your divisional games. You're paying state income tax to the state of California. And then Arizona would be, let's see, Arizona, the Diamondbacks would be the fourth team in that division, which does have an income tax, so you would be paying there as well. So it's an important consideration for athletes, and something that you don't hear about as much as you might with the IRS issues that some may face, but certainly the state and local tax impact is significant. Look here in St. Louis. I mean, people, the St. Louis Cardinals or St. Louis Blues players, when they're performing their home games in the city of St. Louis, they are also subject to the 1% earnings tax on their income. So that's not an insignificant amount when you're talking about a $100 million contract. That's $1 million potentially that you'd be subjected to St. Louis earnings tax if you lived in St. Louis, and certainly any games you play there would also be subject to that.
Because I know as an entertainer at this level, I have to not only file county taxes, but I got to file city taxes. And if I go across the river, I got to do some kind of tax thing from across the river too.
Well, so I mean, the idea is you're supposed to pay where you earn, but you do get credits based on, if you pay state income tax to Illinois, for example. Yeah. That happens a lot in St. Louis because you have folks who live in Illinois but commute to Missouri to work. So their employer may be withholding Missouri income tax even though they live in Illinois. Yeah. But when they go to file their Illinois return, they would get a credit for taxes they paid into Missouri. So you're not really paying more as a result, but it is something. It's an additional burden you have to deal with. And talking about professional athletes, I think that's probably why you see so many golfers set up their domicile or their residency in Florida, right?
Yes,
because it's a no income tax state. You also have a lot of golf tournaments that take place in Florida. Quite a few events in Texas. Yeah, and so I would imagine the PGA when they're looking at potential sites for events, that's something they probably consider versus
I had no idea.
Yeah, maybe they have an event in Connecticut, the Travelers Return, pretty high income tax state. And so it might be that may honestly dissuade some players from playing. A guy like Tiger Woods, he says, well, even if I do well, I'm going to make $1 million, but I'm going to have to pay 10% to the state of Connecticut. I don't really want to do that, so I'm going to sit this one out. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if they really think about that stuff. It's stuff I think about. And certainly when you see people like a John Daly or Pete Rose, and there's been many others. Helio Castroneves was a big time IndyCar driver. He had tax issues. Manny Pacquiao had some issues. His was more international.
He was tough, man.
He was more
a boxer.
Yeah, more international. But you have seen it. We were talking before the show. Warren Sapp was a big-time NFL superstar.
Yeah.
Made, tens of millions, if not $100 million in his career. He ended up filing bankruptcy in the late, I guess it was probably around 2010 or 11.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I remember that is because he also had huge IRS debts. And when I was with the Department of Justice Tax Division, our office was pursuing his tax debt through the bankruptcy, and there was talk of, would he have to sell his Super Bowl ring and all these things with respect to him.
Would the IRS have made him sell his Super Bowl ring?
It's an asset. They can go after any of your assets. So it's certainly
that'd be terrible.
Yeah, they don't like to do that. In terms of what they generally look for is more liquid assets.
Yeah.
Willie Nelson was a funny story. He had a huge tax bill a number of years ago, and he released a record. And I forget the name of it, but it was basically like intended as like the proceeds were going to go to the IRS.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty fascinating. But yeah, a lot of athletes, a lot of entertainers, celebrities. Nicolas Cage was another one in recent memory that had a huge IRS bill, and it'll sneak up on you.
Yeah.
So my advice as the STL tax lawyer is, make sure you stay on top of it. Get yourself with a trusted tax advisor that knows their stuff.
That's you.
Keeps you out in front of it, because that's not, number one, it's not something you want to have to deal with financially, but it's also an embarrassing thing professionally for a big name to get saddled with something like that. So right now, I'm going to talk about not tax related, but one of our sponsors, Ravensburg Incorporated, big time commercial contractor based here in St. Louis, but they do jobs all over the country. They specialize in movable wall systems. We've talked about that before. If you've got a big commercial space, industrial space where you want to install movable wall systems to allow you to subdivide the space when you need it, can't recommend them highly enough. They also can do design and build. So if you've got a project that you want interior, exterior work done on a commercial property, they are the guys to call. And they're Ravensburg.com is where you can find more information. It's Ravensburg Incorporated at Ravensburg.com. Tell them Milty sent you, and they'll take good care of you. So we appreciate you being here today, Smash. You had a good time.
Glad to be here.
It was kind of
definitely.
a sports focus today. It wasn't really intended, but we had Doug Vaughn, 70s heartthrob here.
That was great.
In the studio.
That was.
Talk a little media wars. And we also talked to Steve Lehman, News Channel 5 sports anchor down in Nashville.
Why would you name him a 70s heartthrob of all the kind of things you could have said? I never thought of, that's the funny part, I never thought of Doug Vaughn as a heartthrob. Don't matter what decade.
That's how he refers to himself. Back in his Miami days, he started out down in Miami, South Florida in the 70s.
Really?
Yeah, Miami Vice, wearing the
Speedo or
white,
whatever.
White linen suits.
Wow. So, that is wild.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you guys listening. Yep. You can hear about us or find us on 590thefan.com, themarkmiltonshow.com. I encourage you to become a subscriber at Apple iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate you listening. And as always, Smash, this is the Mark Milton Show with the Smash, presented by STLTaxLawyer.com. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements.
Never.
Broadcasting from the Miller Furniture Studios here in Kirkwood, Missouri. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week.
All right.